the smartest man alive!
I tried to tell all my friends when I was a kid that I had powers, but nobody wanted to.
On Tuesday, Kid Cudi released his fourth studio album, following Man on the Moon 1, 2, and Wizard, his rock album, which we can all agree was awful. This album, Indicud, features a lot of different artists, and it reverts back to his old rap style, but you see a lot of the influence from Wizard in this album. John, how did you feel about the album?
I really thought that this album was great. I didn't think it was as good as his first one, but compared to his second album, I thought this one stood out. I like the way he used his instrumentals that were similar to the first album, Man on the Moon 1, and his acoustic and melancholic beats really stood out to me, and that's what made me like it.
And Andrew, how do you feel about the album?
Well, generally in this genre, I haven't dabbled in it too frequently, but overall, I thought it was pretty average. And of the tracks, I think Solo Dolo Part 2 was probably my favorite. I like the instrumental in that.
I think it's interesting to talk about this album because, one, he's changing the rap genre, basically. He said in an interview that he's no longer finds himself basically in any genre anymore. He doesn't feel like any of them describe his type of music. And you definitely feel that in this album when you go through tracks such as like Red Eye or the one featuring Michael Bolton. Some of the tracks just feel out of place, and that seems to happen a lot on these albums when he's dabbling in different genres. Although Red Eye was really, really good, Cudi seems to take the word featuring and take it to a whole nother meaning when he just doesn't even like rap or sing on a song at all. And I feel like if you're releasing your own album, even though he did produce like all the tracks himself, it feels weird to have songs like that where you don't even hear any Cudi on them at all.
I think he was trying to experiment a lot, like just to see what he could do. Like I think his next album will feature more. But also, like, if this was his first album, he wouldn't be as successful, I feel, yeah. So I think this was just good time for him to just, like, get his input in on his own music.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it was about half the album I really liked and the other half that I didn't at all. As someone who loves hip-hop, I loved all the songs that he featured in and that he actually rapped to, and a lot of one in this album, it was like Grant said, you didn't hear as much Cudi as you wanted to, but with ones that like he was featured in with King Chip and A$AP Rocky and Brothers, his verses are I mean, I thought they were amazing, as well as A$AP Rocky, Red Eye. I didn't like that one. I don't know why.
It's because it's not rap.
It's not rap, and I like Cudi. I like Cudi when he raps. It doesn't have to be like the mainstream rap that it is today. His rap is something unusual, and that's what puts him in a different genre than others.
So the two songs that definitely stood out for me were Bees featuring RZA. Even though I don't think Cudi raps in that one, I'm not sure, but he's definitely mostly RZA. And then Brothers with King Chip. That was just that went back to like the original formula. You've got the hook and you've got your three verses, and that's where Cudi really shines when you're able to do that and you have those two great featuring artists. King Chip sounds a lot like Cudi. I've heard that said, and I think that's kind of why they're such good friends. But it is interesting to have that play back and forth. Some of the songs, Cudi always does this, where he has the weird intro and outro, and I've heard spaceship sounds thrown a lot to describe the album. And along with that, a lot of his hooks are just him kind of like wailing. He doesn't seem to quite know how to sing. Like his rapping is definitely
conscious about it.
Yeah. It's just weird when he's just wailing on songs for no reason. He has a line in Burn Baby Burn where he's like, the black sheep of good music, I'm good for more than just a hook. And in this album he barely like even lives up to his own line, because most of the songs he's just the hook, and I find that hilarious that he has a verse about that, but he's still just doing the hooks on almost every single song.
My favorite song that stood on the album was "Cold Blooded." Like Grant said, it starts out with a weird intro. I was a little iffy about it, and then it really picks up. It's a nice upbeat beat, and the electric guitar in the background is what stood out to me. I don't know. It sounded really great over. It was the one good song in the album where I thought, hey, Kid Cudi can sing. But yeah, just a little. He combined the singing and rapping, so I did like it.
I'm inexperienced in Kid Cudi, but his sound is really unique, and yeah, I'd like to see him collaborate with a lot more artists because he does pull that off pretty well.
There is the New York City Rage Fest. Did you listen to that one? It's just an instrumental.
Oh yeah.
And that one really reminded me of his earlier mixtapes where he'd have the interludes between he'd have 4 on a mixtape, and there'd be no rapping. And I was actually pretty disappointed that he didn't rap over that song because the beat is really good. And if he would have, that probably would have been my favorite song on the album. So, just a little left to desire for this whole album. So our final review for this, out of 10 stars.
6.8.
About a 7.
Yeah, 6.5 for me. A lot left to be desired. Hopefully Man on the Moon 3 will go back to Cudi's old rapping style, and we'll see a lot less of the moaning. He produced every single song on the album, and he wrote almost every single song. There were a couple guest writers, and you can definitely see that as compared to the first albums, which were produced by Plain Pat and Email. It's a completely different world when Cudi's making his own beats and own music to go with it, because it's so much more guitar-based. But if he could go back and just do a couple songs with Plain Pat and Email, that would be amazing. That would really define the next album.